Australia withheld our decision, we might not have signed up either.
Well, I wouldn't accept that. There's 130 countries that have set their targets for net zero by 2050, including many of Australia's major trading partners. And you're right, China has not brought anything new to the table, and India has set that latter date. But as for Australia, there's already a transition that's underway in our economy. We've put out a plan. That plan involves leveraging the $20 billion of investment through the Technology Investment Roadmap and creating more private sector involvement. And as I've made a speech, Chris, in a speech prior to the Glasgow summit, there is also a cost of inaction, and there's already quite a dramatic movement that's occurring in financial markets. So our focus has been on a targeted plan, a considered and costed plan, and that's what we've announced.
But when you add the annual emissions from China, Russia and India, it's more than 40% of global emissions. More than 40% of emissions are turning their back on the 2050 timeline. So why should Australia damage its own economic prospects trying to meet that timeline?
Well, I've made it clear. I don't think it's a binary choice between a stronger economy and an economy that sees its carbon footprint reduced. Indeed, we've reduced our emissions as a country by more than 20% since 2005. At the same time, our economy has grown by 45%, and there's an extra 3 million people in work. It's about having the right plan, and that means investing in the new technologies. They may be hydrogen, carbon capture and storage, solar cell technology, soil carbon. They're the investments that we're making. That's what we've laid out. And with respect to China and India, they've seen their emissions go up. Australia has seen their emissions go down. And I think it's really important for the public to understand that Australia has reduced its emissions faster than other comparable economies like the United Kingdom or the United States, or indeed some other countries like New Zealand and Canada.
Let's turn to the domestic economy, and the good news from your economic management and the post-pandemic economic performance of the country is that there are estimates the country's going to be $45 billion better off over the next 4 years than was forecast. In other words, $45 billion less debt and deficit over the next 4 years. Are you going to bank that to protect the country's finances, or spend some of that in a pre-election budget next year?
Well, we'll update our budget numbers at MyEFO, which is in December. But we have seen an improvement to the bottom line as a result of less people in welfare and more people in work, as well as some strong commodity prices that we saw early in the year. So there was an $80 billion improvement in our final budget outcome for 2021. With respect to the first few months of this financial year, we've also seen improved budget outcomes, and that is going to be good news for our economy overall. But we're not out of the pandemic just yet, Chris. There's still some real challenges ahead. So our economic measures, our initiatives, will be coordinated and will be targeted and will be based on trying to drive a stronger economy as we come out of this crisis.
Surely, given the stimulus and spending over the past year and a half, there's no need for additional spending in a pre-election budget. You want to consolidate the position, surely, is the best thing for the economy.
Well, we're certainly transitioning. We've brought an end to those emergency economic payments, and we're investing in longer-term initiatives like infrastructure projects, as well as, of course, delivering tax cuts, which are also consistent with our political philosophy, allowing people to keep more of what they earn and rewarding effort as well as encouraging aspiration. With respect to those emergency payments, like the COVID disaster payments, we said that they needed to end at that 70 and 80% vaccination rates. With respect to JobKeeper, we brought it to an end after 12 months, and as you know, our political opponents said that it should be continued indefinitely. We have not chosen that path. We've brought those emergency payments to an end. So the economy is transitioning, but the good news is that those tax cuts are actually providing a further stimulus into the economy at a time when that is needed. So, for example, in the first 3 months of this financial year, more than 11 million people have received more than $10 billion in tax relief, and these are the biggest tax cuts in more than 2 decades.
All right, just to confirm though, there will be a budget, it sounds like. There will be a budget before the next election.
Well, the Prime Minister's spoken in those terms, and of course the timing of the election and related decisions are matters for the Prime Minister to take. But in terms of our focus, we've got a mid-year and economic fiscal outlook at the end of this year, and then we'll turn for the new year and there'll be an election, as you know, and any decisions about budgets and the timing of that, then we'll announce exactly that at that time.
OK, when it comes to international diplomacy, there's been a fair bit of liar, pants on fire stuff between the French President, the French Ambassador, our current Prime Minister and our former Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull. You've worked long and hard with Malcolm Turnbull. I'm wondering whether Malcolm Turnbull has ever lied to you.
Not to me, and neither has Scott Morrison. And I've made it very clear that my relationship with the Prime Minister, and he is the leader of the Liberal Party and me as the Deputy, has been a respectful one. It's been a trusting one, and it's one where we've worked, I think, cooperatively and constructively together, Chris. And that has served the government well over the course of the last 3 years, and hopefully will continue to serve it well going forward. But we took a decision as a government, as a National Security Committee of Cabinet, to proceed with the AUKUS arrangement, one that I think is in Australia's long-term national interest and one that will protect our national security. I mean, the United States and the United Kingdom are two long-standing allies. They're two major military powers, and we'll get access to the best technology, whether that's nuclear submarines, artificial intelligence, cyber technologies, as well as advanced weapon systems, all of which will be really important in helping Australia meet the challenging and strategic environment that we now face.
Can Malcolm Turnbull remain in the Liberal Party?
Well, again, I'm not going to get into that level of speculation because I don't think it is helpful. I respect the office that he held as Prime Minister, and as you know, I worked with him effectively, cooperatively when he was the Prime Minister, just as I do now with Scott Morrison. My focus as the Treasurer is helping to navigate our economy's way through what has been the first recession in nearly 30 years, the biggest economic shock since the Great Depression. And as you pointed out at the top of your program, the economy is recovering strongly. It is bouncing back. Unemployment was 5.7% when we came to government. Today it's 4.6%, a 12-year low. And we've avoided the scarring in the labour market, the long-term unemployment that was so reminiscent of previous recessions in the 80s and 90s. So it's a very strong economic record that we'll continue to promote and protect and take to the Australian people at the next election.
Some difficult issues there on many fronts. Thanks so much for joining us, Josh.
My pleasure.
So market down, a budget brought forward to March, April and the election in May. And as for that troublesome former Prime Minister, I'll hear more about him after the break. We'll catch up with New South Wales Senator Holly Hughes next.